Welcome to Speak Peace to My Soul, where we seek Christ, deepen our discipleship, and find quiet strength in His Word. In today's episode, we're diving into the Come Follow Me lesson for Doctrine and Covenants, sections 77 through 80. This week's study takes us from the mysteries of the revelation of John to the practical missions of early church leaders. We'll explore the meaning behind symbolic questions, learn what it means to be agents unto ourselves, and discover how these chapters offer both prophetic vision and personal guidance. Whether you're studying with your family or looking for your own spiritual boost today, this episode is here to help you reflect more deeply and walk more faithfully. Okay, so let's unpack this right from the start. Doctrine and Covenants 77. It kind of drops us right into a really fascinating moment, doesn't it?
It really does. You've got Joseph Smith and Sidney Rigdon, and they're deep in that inspired translation of the Bible.
Right, and they hit the book of Revelation, which, I mean, let's be honest, is a bit of a head-scratcher for most people.
Definitely. It's full of symbols, really cryptic stuff, and they had specific questions, which I think is key here.
Yeah, not just a general confusion.
Exactly. And what's so powerful about Section 77 is how God answers. It's not vague. He gives these precise interpretations. What are the four beasts? What about the seven seals? Bang, 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 specific answers.
It really highlights a principle, doesn't it? That God gives knowledge when we actively seek it, especially when we ask specific questions.
Absolutely. It shows that divine revelation can be incredibly granular, incredibly direct. It's not just feelings. It can be specific intellectual insight when we wrestle with something and take it to God. Joseph lacked wisdom, he asked, and boom, Section 77.
That really makes me stop and think, how often do I just kind of skim over things I don't understand in the scriptures versus really pausing, formulating a question, and seeking an answer like they did?
That's a great personal question, isn't it? Does this section maybe invite us to be a bit more deliberate, more precise in our own seeking for understanding from divine sources?
Yeah, I think it does. It suggests that kind of focused inquiry gets a focused response.
That diligence really seems to be rewarded.
Okay, so moving from seeking clarity on these deep spiritual symbols, the church itself was facing some very practical, very real-world questions around the same time.
Right. By March 1832, the church was growing fast. Over 2,000 members already.
Which is amazing growth, but it brings practical needs, right? They needed to publish the revelations Joseph was receiving. They needed land for the saints' gathering. And they needed ways to care for the poor. Real, tangible stuff.
Exactly. And this is where Section 78 comes in. The Lord instructs Joseph, Neil K. Whitney, and others to form what we know as the United Firm.
To handle the business side of things, like publishing and managing resources in Ohio and Missouri.
Precisely. They were pooling their resources, trying to manage these temporal needs collectively. Now, we know the United Firm eventually had struggles. It accrued debt and was dissolved a couple years later in 1834.
Right, that's an important part of the story, too.
It is. And those struggles actually taught vital lessons about stewardship, about managing things in tough economic times. It led to, different approaches later on, but the initial intent was clear. Unite to advance the cause, as verse 4 puts it.
And I love how, even in setting up this, basically a church business entity, the Lord keeps pointing to the eternal.
Always the big picture.
Yeah, verse 7 talks about preparing a place in the celestial world. Verse 18 about the riches of eternity. So the printing press, the storehouse, they weren't ends in themselves.
Not at all. They were tools, means to an eternal end, which brings up that interesting phrase, agents unto ourselves.
Ah, yes. How does that connect here?
Well, the whole experience of the United Firm, even its dissolution, shows this principle in action. God gives direction, but he expects us to act, to use our agency, to manage resources, to make choices, even difficult ones. We're not just passively waiting, we're active participants in building the kingdom.
So advancing the cause, which I guess means bringing people to Christ, building Zion, preparing for eternal life, requires us to be active agents, using these temporal tools wisely.
Exactly. It's about taking responsibility, learning from experience, and using our agency to further his work. Even when things don't go perfectly, like with the firm's debts, the agency and the effort are part of the process.
That makes sense. It really does connect our sort of everyday efforts, even managing finances or resources in our own lives or families, to that larger divine purpose. It makes you ponder, how can I be a better agent in advancing that cause today? Then, right after these instructions about the firm, the tone shifts. It becomes incredibly tender, almost personal.
Yeah, verse 17, the Lord calls them little children.
That phrase really stood out to me. Why do you think he uses that specific term? It feels so intimate.
I think it captures that feeling we all have sometimes, right? When we're facing things we have not as yet understood or things we just cannot bear, as verses 17 and 18 say. Those moments of feeling small, maybe a bit overwhelmed, uncertain.
Like a child looking at a really complex problem.
Exactly. You know, sometimes when you're trying to explain something big to a child, you break it down, you guide them step by step. You don't just dump it all on them.
Oh,
And maybe that's part of it. The Lord acknowledges our current limitations, our need for gentle guidance. It leads right into that beautiful promise in verse 18. Be of good cheer, for I will lead you along.
I will lead you along. That's incredibly comforting, isn't it? It implies patience, direction, help.
It really does. It suggests he understands we can't handle everything at once, but he'll guide us through it.
It makes me reflect. Think about something that felt huge and impossible when you were younger, but now it seems manageable.
Oh, sure. Lots of things.
Right. So maybe Heavenly Father still wants us to have that childlike quality mentioned in Mosiah 3.19, being teachable, humble, willing to be led.
Yeah.
Even as adults facing complex challenges. How do you feel he's leading you along right now in the things that still feel big?
That's a deep question to ponder personally. Where do I feel that guiding hand, even when I feel like a little child facing the unknown?
And building right on that feeling of needing guidance and trust, verse 19 gives us this. Well, this command, really.
Yes. Receive all things with thankfulness.
That's a tough one sometimes, isn't it? I mean, receiving the good things with thankfulness, sure. But all things, what about the struggles, the setbacks, the things that genuinely hurt?
That's the crux of it, isn't it? It's a profound challenge. Doesn't mean we pretend to be happy about hardship. I don't think so.
So what does it mean then in practice?
Well, I think it's about perspective and trust. It echoes scriptures like Philippians 4 about finding peace through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, even amid anxiety. Or think about the 10 lepers in Luke 17. Only one came back to give thanks. Gratitude requires conscious effort, especially when things are difficult.
So it's less about liking the difficult circumstance and more about choosing to acknowledge God's hand even within it, or trusting there's a purpose.
I think that's a big part of it. Like King Benjamin taught in Mosiah too, recognizing our utter dependence on God for everything, every breath, every moment can shift our perspective. It moves us from feeling entitled to blessings to feeling profound gratitude for grace, even the grace that helps us through trials. It's about acknowledging the giver, even when the gift is hard to understand.
And modern prophets have really emphasized this too, haven't they? President Uchtdorf talking about being grateful in any circumstances. President Nelson on the healing power of gratitude.
Absolutely. They teach it's a choice, a spiritual discipline that actually opens us up to greater peace and understanding. It strengthens our faith.
How do you see cultivating gratitude affecting our actual relationship with Jesus Christ? Does it change how we interact with him?
Oh, definitely. I think when we consciously practice gratitude, especially for the hard things, it's an act of profound faith in him. It says, I trust you even when I don't understand. It deepens our reliance, helps us see his love and support more clearly, even in the midst of the storm. It fosters that connection, that trust, which is core to discipleship.
Okay, finally, let's look at sections 79 and 80. These feel like very, have you seen that play out? Where the focus shifts from, my calling is X, to, I'm here to do the Lord's work.
Absolutely. You see people move, callings change, circumstances shift. But the underlying call to minister, to build faith, to share the gospel that remains, the work is constant. Even if the place or the specific title changes, the Lord is calling us to participate in his work generally.
That's a really powerful perspective. It takes the focus off status or location and puts it on contribution, on discipleship itself.
Exactly. So thinking about someone just getting a new calling, or maybe even those of us without a specific named calling right now, what lessons are in these sections for us?
Well, maybe it's about being ready to go where the Lord needs us. Trusting he'll guide us, like he promised Jared Carter he'd show him by the Comforter where he should go.
Yeah, trusting in that guidance. And maybe recognizing that our value isn't tied to the name of the calling, but our willingness to labor, to act as agents in his vineyard wherever we find ourselves. It's about being engaged in the work.
Right. Focusing on the purpose, the work itself. Trusting he'll lead us along. It brings it all together, doesn't it? So as we wrap up, maybe something to really ponder is how God reveals truth in all these different ways. You've got the deep, symbolic stuff in Revelation needing specific interpretation.
Like in section 77.
And then you've got the very practical, hands-on instructions for running church affairs, learning through trial and error.
Section 78 and the United Firm experience.
Okay? And then these direct calls to action, these mission assignments in 79 and 80. How do all these different kinds of revelation, the grand visions, the practical guidance, the simple calls to serve, how do they all work together in our own spiritual journeys? How does recognizing this breadth help us feel God's love and guidance more consistently in our lives? Thanks for joining us today on Speak Peace to My Soul. We hope this study of D&C 7780 has strengthened your faith and helped you see how God reveals truth both through symbols and through simple acts of obedience. If this deep dive helped you, we invite you to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's walking this journey of discipleship with you. Until next time, may we remember Him more, follow Him closer, and rejoice in His light.